Nothing prepares you for being a Black woman in this world. There's no guidebook, there's no teaching, only inheritance. From the moment we are born, there's an atmosphere over our very existence, which stems from the intersections of racism and sexism that we are subjected to throughout our lives. So, yes, throughout our lives, there's this fog, and there are a lot of moments in life where we don't notice it, where we're in secure spaces, so the thick, dense air almost floats away and feels non-existent. There are also moments in life where the fog completely takes over our world and the air is so thick and it's hard to breathe, and you feel this weight settle in your chest. There are these ebbs and flows that exist. There is one day in particular that we all experienced where we take on this unavoidable rite of passage, and that is the day where you know fully what it means to be a Black woman and what it feels like to be a Black woman in a world where we are so unprotected and vulnerable. For me, that experience came in my first year as a postgraduate young professional. And I assume this moment happens like multiple times throughout life, but I am only 23 years old at this point, so I can only speak to this one central formative experience that I've had thus far. And, I'm going to talk about that for a little bit. When I graduated from college, I went to a HBCU, I graduated, and I immediately went into the workforce. I got a job as a post-baccalaureate researcher, which would serve as, the role I wanted to fulfill while I applied to medical school and took my MCAT and all that. And so I started this fellowship working for the federal government. And, at first when I came in, the world that I felt like I was going into felt so hopeful and like we were going down the right track to continue progressing, the voices of Black women and really trying to overcome these experiences that we have been in for decades. I was very optimistic, very hopeful. Okay. Okay. So I get to this job, I get to this fellowship, and immediately I am like really greeted with these experiences that validated my presence as a Black woman. I joined an academy on health disparities where I got to learn about health disparities and systemic factors that drive different healthcare experiences of marginalized communities. I got to join a network of African American fellows and really make strides towards bringing that organization to the campus that I was on as a postbac. I also had the opportunity to apply for additional funding, um, which was like a diversity stimulating fund for fellows. So when I applied for that and was awarded that fund from my scientific director, that meant I got to attend meetings where I could be around other diverse fellows. And it also meant that my funding was covered in the lab that I joined. And so that experience right after being at HBCU felt really good, and it felt really good for the first few months. Like, it felt like, okay, like life is going pretty well. And then our administration changed. And as a result, of a executive order from our president, my diversity fellowship was terminated and all those things that were around my job disappeared. It's almost like going into work today, it feels like a completely different place, and like the place that I was hired into does not exist because no one really talks about those things that are now gone, and they're like how the loss has affected diverse fellows. It's like, oh, we tried and diversity didn't work, DEI didn't work, like, oh well, on to the next kind of thing. Like, it is genuinely something that no one really talks about. And there are already not a lot of Black women or Black men at my job to really be having these discussions with. So these people from other communities are also just not speaking to it because they have the privilege of not acknowledging it. Anyways, going forward, so 6 months into my fellowship, about all this happens, and Black women are losing their jobs around me, and I'm wondering, okay, I've lost my funding through this grant. Is my PI, who is a white man, going to agree to fund me for another year and renew my contract, and knowing that he would have to take on that financial responsibility and use his own budget to do so? And, we had a conversation around his thought process on whether or not he would renew me. And the main core idea was, Trump was threatening federal funding across the board, especially for researching bodies and institutions. And my boss was, afraid that his funding would be cut and that for the following year, he would have to navigate operating with a stricter budget and what that would look like for his lab and the progression of his studies. And I will note my lab was literally just me and him. It was just me and my PI keeping the lab going. So he was like, okay, I'm maybe not gonna be able to bring me back for a second year because I'm gonna have to strategize how to best optimize the funding that I will have. I'm like, okay, okay. I didn't really understand how much I was hurt by that until like now and when reflecting on those periods of time. But essentially, when he did make that decision to not renew me, it was the first time that I felt like so less than human because I truly was like my presence in lab was truly just dwindled down to a fact of numbers and not, based around the conversations that we'd had around my goals professionally, not based around the commitment that he made to help me grow as a professional and being a mentor, and the first commitment that he made in bringing on a fellow who was under a diversity-based grant. So like he was aware of these conversations around barriers to professional achievement and continued like growth in these spaces for Black women. And, you know, I got put on the back burner, and that very much hurt and was a hard experience to go through. I literally moved to a new city for this job. I was learning these new techniques and learning how to navigate, being in such a small lab. And all of that was pretty much for naught because he was like, this is the way the world is. And that support was um revoked for me. And I understand that, he had to make his decision from a professional standpoint, but I also understand that the feelings that I have around the situation are very much valid because, like, this is what we were fighting for, to be protected in these spaces, to not lose our jobs when people decide that inclusion and equity in our work is no longer important. The goal was to inform these professional worlds and communities of the barriers that we face and hopefully create allies in these spaces who would face the potential of hardship head on and still be supportive. And that is not what happened. And that is something that completely broke down my confidence for months. And not only that, I had to navigate fulfilling the end of my contract for 3 months because I was not renewed, and also look for a new job and apply to medical school in the height of all of these changing moments in our country. That was a hard experience. And, I spent a lot of days completely drained, crying, upset, no support system. I would sit at work, sit in my office, and literally the tears would just flow. And I'd just be like, I don't know what emotion I'm feeling right now, but I'm definitely crying. I'm definitely stressed. And I would still be doing work for this lab and for this institution that made it very clear that they would not be advocating or fighting for these things any longer. That was a hard thing to go through. And I did come out on the other side of that. I found another lab. I found a PI who has been very supportive to my growth and has completely changed my perception of what mentorship can look like. And I've enjoyed the space that I am now in. And it's in the same federal body. It's just a different lab, a different person, a new environment where, you know, being supportive wasn't just a box to check. This is something that is truly something that this person is committed to. And this is a white woman, whatever, whatever. So just to paint the picture of what I went through. But, again, lately there's been so many conversations around DEI and affirmative action, and you only got this position because you're Black, and we're cleaning space of these people who really didn't deserve to be here in the first place, right? And although the environment that I'm now in is far more supportive, I am still one of the only Black women that work in this job and are in my role. And that is a hardship that, you know, I've been navigating because just yesterday I had a coworker tell me like, "Oh, I didn't even know MLK was on Monday. That's a pleasant MLK Day was on Monday. That's a pleasant surprise." And I was like, "Why do you feel comfortable saying to a Black woman that like you didn't know this major holiday was coming up?" Like just the things that I hear in my job sometimes make it very clear that like, whoa, our lives are very different. And, recently I have been trying to find ways to surround myself with the voices of Black women and voices of my community, even though I work in a place where that like environment is not created and is non-existent. And so I've been listening to audiobooks like every day. Every day I listen to a new audiobook because lab work is really long. It goes on for hours. Like I have so much time in my schedule to listen to audiobooks. So I listened to Freedom is a Constant Struggle by Angela Davis. And it really made me reflect on my understanding of solidarity and what that looks like. I listened to Poverty by America, and the author is escaping me right now, but that's another thing that made me really think, okay, these are the privileges that I've had due to the hardships that I've had, but like there are still some ways that I'm contributing to like upholding these systems myself, even as a Black woman. And I also started reading Outsider by Audre Lorde, and it's just brought such a peace and a warmth over my life, and it's made me remember the voice that I have and the confidence that I have and can share. And when I was in high school, I think I was way more vocal about my feelings around these topics and about wanting to be an organizer and be tapped in and be educated. And at a certain point, my professional life kind of took so much focus out of me that I really could not stay up to date in the ways that I wanted to and pour into myself in the ways that I wanted to. But I've decided that I really want to change that. I really want to get back into what I feel like is my best state, which is where I am constantly learning from and listening to the stories of other Black women. And this is my introduction to a series called Ology of a Black Woman, which will be me just thinking about these questions that I have or these experiences that I've had that I want to find answers to about what is like what is the experience of other Black women who are going through this? What are experiences that I don't know about? How can I be more in solidarity and everything like that? All these nooks and crannies that I want to learn about. And so that's going to be me in this series. I'm going to, make some videos about these topics that I'm exploring, the readings, the things that I'm reading, the videos that I'm watching, the speeches I'm listening to, the poems I'm listening to, the art that I'm like looking at and just coming into a new understanding of. So this video is me literally just talking to myself on Zoom. The production quality may not be the best, but I'm just really excited to really dive into learning again and just really absorbing my experience and sharing my experience fully as a young Black woman. What I want to share in concluding this video is an essay from this book, Black Women in America: Social Science Perspectives. And it's a collection of essays and writings and research findings that really speak to some experiences that Black women have. And the aim of this book is to introduce how we can go about teaching African American social science perspectives, well, African American women's social science perspectives in academia. The reason why I want to read a piece of this is because it perfectly like centers how I'm feeling about going about educating myself and really conceptualizing the way that I exist in this world as a Black woman. And it says, I've come to learn that the whole process by which we teach material quite often invalidates the very concepts we wish to convey. Elements of material culture, such as quilting, are in fact illustrative of a particular way of seeing, of ordering the world. Culture, in its largest sense, is after all a resource that provides the context in which people perceive their social world. Perceptions of alternatives in social structure take place within a framework defined by the patterns and rhythms of that particular culture. Developments within specific elements of African American culture provide clues to economic and political developments. A people's cultural aesthetic is not different from their economic or political aesthetic. It is just visible to us in a different form. So the reason why that piece of this essay resonated with me is because, like I said, I went to a historically Black college for my undergraduate studies. I'm someone who, I've been reading different thought leaders across, Black women's experiences throughout history, yes. And the way I went about learning, for the most part, was, the way that we go about learning in school. We're presented information, and then we say, like, what does this information mean? And we apply it to our lives. But this essay really hits on the fact that learning and understanding our experiences is very much non-linear. And the author of this essay also uses the term polyrhythmic. And so I really want to be open to learning in a multitude of ways and understand that me sharing my experiences and using my voice within, you know, being a learner and seeking education and understanding is another element and piece of both learning and teaching others. And she goes on to say, how do we come to understand, not just intellectually, but unconsciously as well, that African American women have indeed created their own lives, shaped their own meanings, and are the voices of authority on their own experience? We do this by learning that we can be our own voices of authority. We fear we cannot because we have been taught we cannot. We learn we can, and thus we empower ourselves. Experiencing their own authority better enables students to hear authority in the various voices of the African American women we study. I will link this essay in this video bio, but essentially, this series is going to be a mashup of me learning, of me unlearning, of me validating other Black women's experiences, and really, really, really doing the work to just unpack this. And I don't think there's any end goal in mind here. There's no, I'm going to reach this height of self-actualization or anything like this, but I'm just curious. I just want to know. I just want to relate and find community with these women who have a shared experience, but also such unique experience in lives. So, yeah, if that's something you're interested in, subscribe to this channel and, stay tuned. Yeah, thanks so much, and welcome to Ology of a Black Woman.